Welcome, we are here in the last throes of Digital Manufacturing Week, but I'm here in the TM studio with Michael Wignall from Microsoft. Welcome, Michael. Great keynote this morning to kick us off on day two of the Leaders Summit. Inspiring presentation, really fantastic. It was all around cloud-enabled sustainability, and it sort of was based around Microsoft's carbon commitments for 2030, which were announced sort of early last year. Could you give us a bit of a background about what those commitments are and sort of the timings of them and why they were put in place?
First, Joe, thanks for having me. It's been amazing. This expo area has been buzzing. It's my first in-person event in 18 months, so it's great to be able to be on the keynote stage and talk to an audience and feel that in-person buzz. We were talking about cloud-enabled sustainability this morning, and part of that is based on Microsoft's renewed commitment to sustainability. We've been talking about carbon neutrality for about 10 years, but it was only last year that we made some really clear commitments to becoming carbon negative by 2030, to become waste neutral by 2030, and to be water positive by 2030. And so those three things, carbon, waste and water, are really big commitments by Microsoft. There's a lot of work to be done between now and 2030, but we're really pleased and proud of the stance that we're taking in this area.
Fantastic. And I mean, how sort of challenging is it, do you think, it's going to be to fulfill those ambitions? Because as I say, I think you alluded to in your keynote that Microsoft's been around since the mid 70s, so it's 30, 40 years old. So how challenging is it going to be to implement those ambitions?
I mean, our ambitions are incredibly challenging. We don't want to set expectations that this is easy. I think if it was really easy, people would have done it already. I think the time is now. There's definitely a sense of urgency around it. And the difference I think we're taking beyond where we might have done for the last 10 years is we're focused not just on our own emissions, our Scope 1 emissions and our Scope 2 emissions, so the core energy around our data centers and our infrastructure and the power that provides that. We're extending that to Scope 3 as well to look at the entire supply chain. But we don't actually have all the answers yet. So we have a target and a commitment, we have plans. And part of the carbon negativity pledge by 2030, so that's to take out of the atmosphere more carbon that we put in. We want to continue to do that post 2030, so by 2050, we made a commitment to take out all of our historic carbon. So we'll go back to 1975 and have removed every bit of carbon that we've put into the atmosphere since the company's founding. That's a big task.
Sure,
we'll have to do carbon removal. There'll have to be new technologies developed to be able to do that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, looking at the roadmap, what kind of strategies do you have in place to achieve these goals?
Well, I lead the cloud business for Microsoft in the UK, so the first thing I'm going to say is moving to the cloud. And there's absolutely clear benefits around economies of scale, efficiencies of our infrastructure, and some of the things that we wrap around our next generation data centers like green renewable energy. We've made a commitment that all of our data centers globally will use 100% renewables by 2025. And then it's the how we enable that. So moving to the cloud, absolutely, that's part of it. But that's not enough, and so part of the commitment is not just what we do with our technology, but how we provide that technology to others, to manufacturers, to finance industry, to businesses big and small, to public sector, you name it, to help them achieve their emissions targets and to help them become more sustainable. And I think that partnership journey, so we want to do it, we want to learn best practice, but we want to work with others, is really important because we can't do it alone. We need to learn from others and we need to work together on this campaign.
Sure. So what role is technology going to play in the road to sustainability, and how integral is it going to be?
I mean, we can't do this without technology. It's not enough just to do efficiency savings. We did talk about it in the keynote this morning. Efficiency will get us a long way, but we still need to use energy to do a lot of the things in our society today. Moving to green energy will take some of the emissions away from that. But one of our approaches is to become water positive. So we want to provide more water back into the environment that we take out. To do that, it requires advances in technology. To do that, you have to come up with new approaches to think about doing things differently. And so there's really two elements of the technology. There's the underlying platform technology, cloud-enabled scale, but then it's about doing clever things with data, with artificial intelligence, with coming up with new business models to think about how we can do carbon removal or other approaches that just don't exist today. And those approaches will require technology to enable them.
Sure. So, I mean, if I'm a manufacturer and I want to sort of implement change to be more sustainable, how can cloud technology help me, and how can I go about best deploying it?
I I mean, the first recommendation is absolutely look at your current infrastructure estate, and there's a set of tools out there. Microsoft has a emissions dashboard which allows you to do an inventory of your current infrastructure, what you've already got, and the emissions that produces, and then do an assessment on how easily it is to move to the cloud. We've done a whole bunch of assessments to look at the reduction in carbon emissions and energy usage you can provide just by moving what is there today to the cloud. So manufacturers, big and small, should absolutely go and do a sustainability assessment, look at their emissions, and then build a roadmap on how to move to the cloud. And they don't need to do it all at once. They can start small with a few things, but that is a great first step, because in doing that, they'll be able to measure their emissions. So once you measure it, then you can manage it. And I think that's the other big thing we take away, that moving to the cloud is one step, but then you want to collect data about everything you do in the cloud, but also from your downstream supply chain. Once you've got that data, you know what the impact it is, then you can put new techniques and approaches in place to manage it.
Yeah, you can't manage what you can't measure is I think it's the phrase.
You can't manage what you can't measure, and I think part of the challenge we have today is there really isn't some standards about how to measure it. Like, people are measuring things in different ways, and so one of the things we're trying to do with the emissions dashboard and the new Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability is provide a framework based on open standards to come up with a common way of measuring, and if people start measuring in a common way, then they can manage it proactively.
Yeah, sure. Is there still a misconception amongst some businesses and manufacturers that if I want to be sustainable, this is going to cost me? Is that still a view that's widely held?
Absolutely. I think the perception that you have to pay to be sustainable, I come up with every day. I talk to customers and partners all the time, and one of the big blockers they go is, well, that's going to cost us, Michael. We need to, sacrifice some profit to be able to become sustainable. And it's simply not true. Even at the basic level, so using core cloud services, there's business cases that we had well before we brought sustainability business cases in that showed the cloud is more cost effective than on-premises solutions. So moving to the cloud allows you to reduce your costs, minimize CapEx, take care of the spikes in demand, so you only need to pay for what you use instead of buying lots of infrastructure that might sit idle for a while. All of the business case behind that often was around cost. Now, if you reduce your costs through the cloud, then that is reducing energy usage, compute power. There's a knock-on effect to reduce sustainability. So we fundamentally believe that there's the cost-cutting or cost efficiency savings you can get from the cloud have a knock-on effect to sustainability effects, and you don't have to trade off one versus the other.
You mentioned the dashboard earlier, but what other tools can Microsoft provide that help manufacturers on the road to their sustainability journey?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about what our customers do with our technology, what they build and innovate. Microsoft doesn't have all the answers. We are a platform company. We build infrastructure, we build tools and capabilities, and then it's about manufacturers doing clever things on top of the platform. And I talked about some of the examples this morning, some case studies. Recycleize, a really great example of a small startup, London-based. They're basically built using Azure machine learning, so image recognition and really cheap cameras, a technique to look at the waste cycle and increase the amount of recycling you can take from waste to try to reduce the overall number of waste. A really good example of where they've used technology to do something innovative. Rolls-Royce is another great example, a good UK manufacturer. They're working with our data platform and AI to do simulations on engine efficiency.
Sure.
And so the more that they can simulate different models of tweaks to their engine design helps them build more efficient engines and therefore become more sustainable over the long term. So those types of examples are ones I'm really passionate about. It's manufacturers using our technology platform in innovative ways. There's a benefit just using the platform in and of itself, but then doing something clever on top of it that they know the best about is really what excites me about this whole opportunity.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you for taking the time to speak to us, and I will say enjoy the rest of the show, but it's packing up around us, but safe journey home.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been a fantastic event.
Thank you.
Cheers.